the circle as always. Now, if the middle line is in the middle, your face will be drawn from the front. And if your middle line goes to the side, your face will be drawn sideways. And for a 3/4 view, you have to draw it halfway between those. All the other guidelines will be the same as before. For example, the next guidelines will also be in the middle and at the end of the circle. And don't forget on the mnemonic device when it comes to proportions, 2, 1, 1. And maybe you also noticed how my lines are slightly curved. It's not that obvious from this perspective, but try getting used to it because other perspectives will require curved lines as well. You need to start thinking 3D from here on out. As always, we're placing the ear between our guidelines. Doing that from the sideways perspective is pretty easy, because you can just place it right in the middle of the circle. But where is the middle of the circle in a 3/4 view? And like I said, in order to draw this, we need to think more 3D. So, the middle line would be over here. If you're not as good with thinking 3D, that's okay. That's just a matter of practice. As always, connect the ear and the chin with a jaw. And voila, you have one half of the face. As a beginner, I always had problems with the second half, but don't worry, the second half is pretty easy if you know how to draw it. And that's what I'm here for. First of all, you need another guideline. And this guideline will end right here, at this horizontal guideline. And now here comes this guideline into play, the cheekbone. And of course that's not a perfect shortcut, you kinda need to know what you're doing here. But knowing that the cheek's a bit dent in due to the cheekbone is knowledge that can help you a lot when it comes to drawing the face shape. And speaking of the face shape, we're pretty much done with that. Everything we still need would be our building blocks from last time. I now want to face the elephant in the room because most of you probably have problems with placing eyes in this perspective. As a beginner, you'd naturally think that both eyes are drawn on the same line. But if you listen carefully, you'd know that this line is actually slightly curved. So yeah, no ruler in this world is gonna save you here. I know it's probably not gonna work out perfect right from the start, but drawing eyes like this will get you a lot further. The most important thing is you get the guidelines and thus the building blocks correctly. And then everything else should be relatively easy in comparison. But if you're still having trouble, art is not only knowledge about how to draw something, but also a lot of practice and actual muscle memory. I've asked people on Instagram if practice or knowledge was more important, and the outcome was kinda what I anticipated. So you can guess where I'm getting at. After this video, you have the knowledge how faces work, but you still need to put in all the practice to actually get it down. So yeah, it's probably not gonna work out the first time, and that's okay. So, when in doubt, always remember knowledge plus practice equals your artwork. This is very simple mathematics, believe me, I know what I'm talking about. Really? So you were a good student back in math class? Let's continue with the video. Of course, there are many more angles from where we could draw a face. Let's stick to the obvious ones, like drawing a face from above or below. And you guessed it, we're always using the same guidelines as before. So, what we're doing now is to foreshorten our faces. I made a whole video about foreshortening, but in case you didn't see it, it basically means the parts that are further away get smaller, while the parts that are facing towards us are getting bigger. Or, in layman's terms, 3-1-1. And this may look complicated, but the rules are still the very same as before. The ears are still between those two guidelines, like I showed in part 1. And also the nose is still between those two guidelines. And the same goes for the eyes, they are right on the same guideline as they were before. So yeah, the most crucial part is getting those damn guidelines right. If you can do that, you basically have your framework, and then you just need to apply the rest on top of that framework. And yes, I bet there's people out there who don't need guidelines, but they are practically priceless when it comes to learning. Placing the building blocks is something you should have seen coming, and now I'm drawing a very basic face out of this. Okay, before we draw a face from the bottom angle, there's something you need to know first. Because we now truly need to think in 3D. That's the only way we can spot the final part of our puzzle, and that's this kind of plate right here. That's a big problem for a lot of artists. They don't think 3D and miss out on this part right here. And yeah, I'm aware that this shape isn't exactly anatomically correct, because you have your Adam's apple right here when you're a guy, and also the shape at the end of the jaw is a bit different. But you guys know how I roll. In order to learn something, we need to keep it simple. So let's keep this part a triangle for now. So now we know everything in order to draw a face from the bottom angle. We're starting out like always with a circle and our basic guidelines. And now we have to push those guidelines up. But always keep in mind that those guidelines are always fixated at the ears. Maybe imagine it like a visor of a helmet or something. As always, we now split the face in 3 parts. So let's add the new part we just learned about, the triangle. Just be sure to keep the proportions just like before. The part that faces towards us is bigger when we draw it in perspective. If you want to learn more about perspective and want to draw more foreshortened objects, you can just watch my video on it. I think it's one of the best videos on this channel yet, and you should definitely give it a watch if you are interested. You guys know what's next. That's right, we add our building blocks. Place them like you did before. You know, the eyes are at the upper guideline, the nose is between both lines, and so on. Something very important I need to mention: since we're drawing everything very curved, you also need to draw your building blocks more curved. So, drawing an eye in this perspective looks kinda like this. All of this could seem a bit much, but believe me, once you have the basics down, those things are just details. So, you probably noticed how I've been repeating myself over and over, how you're starting with this circle, and then you add your guideline, something at the ears. Maybe imagine it like a visor of a helmet or something. As always, we now split the face in 3 parts. So let's add the new part we just learned about, the triangle. Just be sure to keep the proportions just like before. The part that faces towards us is bigger when we draw it in perspective. If you want to learn more about perspective and want to draw more foreshortened objects, you can just watch my video on it. I think it's one of the best videos on this channel yet, and you should definitely give it a watch if you are interested. You guys know what's next. That's right, we add our building blocks. Place them like you did before. You know, the eyes are at the upper guideline, the nose is between both lines, and so on. Something very important I need to mention: since we're drawing everything very curved, you also need to draw your building blocks more curved. So, drawing an eye in this perspective looks kinda like this. All of this could seem a bit much, but believe me, once you have the basics down, those things are just details. So, you probably noticed how I've been repeating myself over and over, how you're starting with this circle, and then you add your guidelines and building blocks, blah blah blah. And that's because it's always the same procedure. I don't have anything new to teach you guys. So this is goodbye for now. But before
Come on. Now, bro, it's your turn to edit. Oh, quick, get to it. Start. Hi, I'm Mark. Once upon a time, I used to be a senior artist at Blizzard Entertainment, and now I teach art for a living. In this bald episode of my YouTube series I call YouTube Art School, we're gonna have to talk about the quality of your drawings. The spies I have hidden in your walls all have reported that you've been struggling to draw line art. So let me show you a bunch of professional tips and exercises to help increase the quality of your line art by at least 420%. Alright, class in session. Pay attention and pray the class everyone like one to draw clean lines. We need two things: the right technical skills and an understanding of line weights. We'll start with technical stuff first, specifically what you draw. So brushes. This class applies to both traditional and digital artists, and in either case, you'll want to find a brush word and so like and stick to it. Each tool has a line curve, and the more you use it, the more you'll be able to do this. In my case, I almost always use this brush here, and you can use it to links I have in the video description. I have versions for Photoshop and specific free. Moving right along, once you make brush skills, the next technical skills to focus on will be your line confidence. You don't actually need to be confident in your lines to have a confident line, so don't act yet. You just gotta start using right technique to draw to avoid drawings that look like this one. There are two ways to draw a brush stroke: using your wrist or using your shoulder. For small details, it works great to use your wrist with the side of your hand firmly rested on the drawing surface. But you get no range that way, so it doesn't work for longer brush strokes. You'll automatically get chicken scratch lines, and that's objectively not aesthetic. If you prefer that though, then fine, but just know that you have poor taste. For longer strokes, you'll want to remove any weight you had on the hand and use the entire arm in the motion. It's physics. You always get a more stable result when you involve multiple joints in the motion. The hand should be able to glide over the drawing surface that way and allow for much cleaner, confident lines. It definitely helps to have a smudge guard as well. Now, the main pushback on this is usually that it's too physically hard to do, but it really isn't if you do it right. You really only need to lift the weight off your hand and engage your shoulder during the action of drawing the line. All the time you're not doing that, which is like 80-90% of the time, you're resting. So no excuse. And then the last bit of technical skill to cover simply has to do with dexterity. You gotta put in the reps to get better. All the theory in the world won't help you unless you develop your dexterity, just like you did when you first learned to write as a kid. I got you though. I put together a list of the best exercises to improve your line dexterity, the same exercise that I've practiced myself for years and still do whenever I'm doodling. I actually have a full class going over that, so you know what, I'll link it in the video description. Now we're ready to move on to line weight, which is reading to bring drawings to life. And there are a couple of things you might hear. I'm sure most of you already know a thing or two about it, but I want to go over everything. Hopefully we will take up a few things you weren't doing yet. Simply put, this drawing has no weight to its lines, and I made sure to use nice clean brush strokes so the technical side really isn't an issue here. Doesn't look hot. And this is a drawing with weighted lines. You can see first of all how much better the drawing reads, and I would argue this is what line weight is all about. But it also just looks much better. The variety in the line thickness, the contrast we get, even the suggestion of shadow. It's almost like comparing a book without paragraphs or punctuation to one that has it. The latter is much easier to read. So there are 5 guidelines that I want to go over when it comes to improving your line weight. Starting with the fact that how thick a line is should depend entirely on how important that line is. Not every line is as important, obviously, but representing them as such is key to good line weight. One thing that makes a line more or less important is whether it's a silhouette defining a line or not. Is it the contour line of something? This one isn't, so it shouldn't be particularly thick. This one here though defines this entire silhouette, so we can add a bit of thickness to make it stand out more. And that's essentially the effect a thicker line has. It attracts more attention. If something is a small detail, usually it'll work best to use a thinner line for it to make sure it doesn't stand out too much. And that's that. So let's move on to the next guideline that will make your line weight even better. And I just want to mention real quick that, of course, developing your fundamentals and getting better at
Art is a science, and learning modules have hierarchical relationships. Different modules follow a sequence, and there needs to be a foundation for the previous level before mastering the content of the next level. Insufficient understanding of the previous level module will hinder learning the next level. Without understanding perspective, it is difficult to comprehend light and shadow. Without understanding light and shadow, learning color intersect at 90 degrees. We can find a set of perspective grids as a reference. We can find the center point of a cube by using the diagonal. This is 2-point perspective. When using 3-point perspective, an additional vanishing point will be added above or below. This vanishing point is usually far away from the canvas. When should we use 2-point perspective, and when should we use 3-point perspective? In the video, How to Create a Sense of Immersion, I discuss using three-point perspective to simulate the eye and create a more immersive experience for the viewer. Simulated eye is a term used to explain a technique. More accurately, it refers to the angle of vision that creates the effect of objects appearing larger when closer and smaller when farther away. This is a camera. The camera is oriented parallel to this cube, presenting a two-point perspective. If the camera is pointed downwards, the distance from the camera to each end of the square will be different. The farther end will appear smaller, creating a contraction effect, which is three-point perspective. It will be more intuitive to view in 3D. Next, we will calculate the proportions. Here's a cube. How do you draw a cube exactly the same size next to it? You can find the center point of a cube by using the diagonal line. Two cubes can be combined to form a rectangle. The center of the rectangle will be here. Draw a diagonal line through the center to obtain equal-sized cubes. This method can determine the orientation of space, allowing us to understand the proportion and position when placing objects within it. We will use drawing a room from different perspectives as an example. This method can determine the orientation of space, allowing us to point perspective. If the camera is pointed downwards, the distance from camera to each end of the square will be different. The farther end will appear smaller, creating a contraction effect, which is three-point perspective. It will be more intuitive to view in 3D. Next, we will calculate proportions. Here's a cube. How can you draw a cube exactly the same size next to it? You can find the center point of the cube by using the diagonal line. Two cubes can be combined to form a rectangle. The center of the rectangle will be here. Draw a diagonal line through the center to obtain equal-sized cubes. This method can determine the orientation of space, allowing us to understand the proportion and position when placing objects within it. We will use drawing a room from different. This method can determine the orientation of space, allowing us to understand the proportion and position when placing objects within it. We will use drawing a room from different perspectives as an example. Draw a cube divided into 16 equal parts using the method discussed earlier. As an example, draw a cube divided into 16 equal parts using the method discussed earlier. First, determine the plan view and side view, and grasp the proportion and orientation. Through this information, it can be used as a reference. For complex objects, the same method applies to as well. This one has a proportion problem because the first example is not an isometric cube. This is the last example. You may notice the angles of the pizza box and the chair are not consistent. How can we calculate in this situation? In the video, How to Create a Sense of Immersion, I discussed the method of using the angle of the section, where the angle increases as the distance from the horizon line increases, and vice versa. This technique is suitable for drawing outdoor scenes or sketches. However, if you want more accurate drawings, you will still need to do calculations. Regardless of how many sets of perspectives, their vanishing points will always be on the same horizontal line. All we need to do is add another path and draw an additional set of perspective grids as a reference. For complex objects, there is a hack that can be used as long as you are able to draw a box. For instance, how can we place the pizza inside the box? There is a very simple method. It's time to create after finishing the tedious practice. This time, it's half create. I combined a background photo with a model of a person. During the process of painting, I added some elements that were different from the original plan. After practicing perspective, I am more confident in arranging the space in my artwork. However, there are still many problems. I should add a few more perspectives to make the image more diverse. The leaves are too flat, wasting the opportunity to utilize space. The composition's focus is on the character rather than the color relationship. I always rely on 3D models for characters and have never specifically practiced anatomy. I find it very boring to tackle a single task alone, especially perspective. Next, I will gradually transition to learning about anatomy and lighting. Please remember, when you practice, you love art.
Premium is for those seeking new old masters. In these streaming episodes, I'm going to show you how different artists work, talk about the process, and show you where to begin getting your skills. We are right at the beginning here. Assuming you have bought your materials, we will begin using them right away. I don't know Botchell's exact approach to this painting, but I do know
我们画一个没有动态的头，朝前的头，先画成一个方块，把这个方块呢变成一个接近于人头的造型。那么怎么样让它动起来？这个是中线，把它往后仰。还是先把这个肩搭起来，然后肩颈部的这个面先找到，往后仰。按照我们之前所说的，不要把头这样往后仰，不要头原地仰。头要连着颈部往后，它要靠近后脑勺，要靠近后背。如果一开始上来画不清楚这个形状，那可以先画一个方块，这个也是我们前面一再强调画方块的重要性。后面这里呢，后脖子这里变短，中线。老发这里还是不够往后啊，这个位置不够。我们先画脖子，先把脖子的位置定下来，然后连接脖子的这个位置先定下来。这样的话看起来就舒服一些。那么还是这个肩不变，我让这个头往前倾，这个叫屈颈部。那么头部这个体块要落下来，下巴的位置要靠近锁骨。这是我们默写动态必须要掌握的。那么还是这个人，还是这个肩，再把它初始的这个肩再画一下。那么我们画它往左边旋转，旋转过去之后，这里呢我就不强调太多了，我直接画对的啊，不先画一个错的了。一开始我们所说的转的时候，头不要原地，转过去之后，往哪边转，下巴就靠近哪边的肩。 在我们这个角度看的话，头变成了侧面的，但是相对于肩呢，它是转过去的。我们再换一个角度啊，来解析一下这个动作。从顶视的角度来看，这是肩，这是肩头的朝向，这是胸腔、胸大肌，这是背部，背部的中线、肩胛骨，肩部的横截面是这个形状。那么头呢是这个形状，这是后脑勺，这是额头，这是它的正面，是这个方向。我们头在往侧面转的时候，一般不会转到90度，什么意思呢？转到90度看起来是非常的别扭的，也就是说，你画一个纯正面的肩，然后再画一个纯侧面的头，就说明它的运动角度是90度，90度看起来比较别扭。在这里呢，我们画的也不是90度。头在往这边转的时候，这个角度大概其实看着就比较舒服了。那么看它呢，我们是从这个角度看的，也就是说从这个角度看，这个头变成了基本上是侧面的，然后肩是一个3/4的，能想象得到吗？这是一个空间想象的问题。我们画一个没有动态的头，朝前的头，先画成一个方块，把这个方块呢变成一个接近于人头的造型。那么怎么样让它动起来？这个是中线，把它往后仰。还是先把这个肩搭起来，然后肩颈部的这个面先找到，往后仰。按照我们之前所说的，不要把头这样往后仰，不要头原地仰，头要连着颈部往后，它要靠近后脑勺，要靠近后背。如果一开始上来画不清楚这个形状，那可以先画一个方块，这个也是我们前面一再强调画方块的重要性。后面这里呢，后脖子这里变短，中线